Hello everybody, today I'm going to talk about modding Skyrim. It's a follow-up to a video I made in the past about how to make large quest mods. In the past I focused on scripting, and this one I'll focus on the general game design. I say game design, even though it's a mod, because it's the same process. Now, a lot of people say, oh, we're going to make a new continent, right, with no experience under the belt. Now, I always say, how do you get experience if your mod is never finished? And this is the thing about these large continents, they're usually never finished. The ones that do manage to finish them, hats off to them, because they've achieved something most people try and fail to do. The hardest thing in everything is either texturing, because texture is always taking time and always requires a skill set, and those that have got the skill set are usually doing something else, or scripting. Everything else is easy. Doing all the eye candy, the levels and stuff, that's easy. Although it does take skill to make a good level. Let's not pretend that just because making levels is easy doesn't mean you can't. That making good ones doesn't require skill. Because making good ones does require skill. A lot of people when they're like revamping cities, they'll just put junk everywhere with no thought as to how the AI is going to navigate around everything, or even what disruption it's going to cause to other mods. When I decorate cities and towns, I tend to put things out of the way where AIs never go, so it doesn't disrupt the natural flow of a city, and any mods that already use it should be fine. And if they're not fine, a few simple changes will make it okay on my side. So anyhow, you've got to be careful with these things. But when you design a new mod, first thing you need to think about is where you're starting and where you're going to end. Now, you notice I didn't say anything about the middle. So let's say Helgen, let's use Helgen as a result. We start as a prisoner in Helgen, and we're going to end as Emperor. Right? So we start, well, in my case, I went beyond Emperor. I went to the beginning of a new Great War. Anyway, it says we started as a prisoner. First thing we need to get Helgen up and running. Now, I didn't want to focus too much on the building of the city, because I'd done that with Kovac, and I didn't want to do it again. So what I did is, I had people, by the time you get to Solitude, the Empire had restored Helgen, so it was functional again after the dragon attack. They didn't just abandon it. And when you go back, you find there's missions available and positions available that you can do to fill the gaps in their units and whatnot. And you start patrolling. Now this first step, right, I designed that to be a way of joining the Legion and feeling like a Legionnaire. It was just like the Elder Council mod where you join the Imperial Legion there. You did a few mundane tasks to get your hand in and a name for yourself, and then you move on to the better things. Now that was part one. Now why did I do part one like that? Basically to get it out there and get the mod known. Because once the Return to Helgen's done, and people know, it's out, they'll start following it. And that means you've got 10 quests in a mod where it restores Helgen. That was version 1. That was my plan. That's where I started, my start point. I knew I wanted you to be Emperor at some point. So I said to my fans, I want you to be Emperor before the end of this mod. Second part, was just more towards that end. Don't forget, Helgen tied into the main plot and other plots as well, so it wouldn't unlock some features until you'd finished certain parts of the main, the default quest lines, such as killing the Emperor and finishing the Civil War and things like that. If you chose Stormcloaks, it would change everybody in the thing to Stormcloaks. Then you continue doing what you did before, but you'd never become Emperor because you rebelled against that. But anyhow, the next part, if I can remember what it was about doing missions that showed just how bad the Falmor were to the people of Skyrim. So you've got to see, some of the misdeeds and be involved in them, because as an Imperial soldier you had to support them. And it goes on like that. Anyhow, these steps were taken to demonstrate why events were going to happen. Now, when I started, I knew where I wanted to start, I knew where I wanted to end, but everything in between was a blank. I wanted to go with it. And it's important, this, right? You might think careful planning of that middle bit was important, but it isn't. It's not for mods anyway, because you need to be able to direct the mod in an area in a way where you're going to stay interested. Because if you do a mod and you've got it all planned out, you'll get bored. If you can go, do you know what? I fancy a massive dragon fight in this version. You can go and do it. Right? Now, I introduced lore throughout the mod. So you've got to taste the actual lore of the game as you went through the mod. That was always the plan. That was going to be there regardless. Taking on the Falmor, you know, their hidden bases and things like that. I mean, that was easy. I mean, don't get me wrong, right? Building all them sets, right? I can't remember, 6 or 7 huge locations to take on the Falmor on. They were just a labour of love, right? They were huge sets. They were easy sets. I found making them in caves to be the best way, although not the only way. But I mean, gigantic Dwemer ruins seemed the obvious hiding place for Falmor armies. So yeah, I did it, and I enjoyed every minute of it. I still love those levels, and they're not difficult to make, and they make a huge impact. Because the more you had to explore in your mod, the better it is. And if the game can still use them after you finish with them, even better. So I like to have things that could respawn in the mod, right, or change to something else later on. That way the player could keep going back and doing it again. You know, give them something to do when he wasn't doing the quest line. Plus, the other thing was original loot. I changed the loot tables for mine to something unique, right? I didn't change the default ones, I changed ones for mine. I made my own loot tables. Instead of using the default ones, so my levels felt exactly the same as the Bethesda ones, I changed the loot tables in my levels to give unique loot for those levels. So I'd have special Dwemer loot tables, special Falmor loot tables in each level. As a consequence, you got unique items whenever you went in there. Now, this makes the levels feel a bit more unique, a bit more interesting for people that are used to the normal Skyrim levels, right? But this level of detail isn't something you can skip over. You have to do it. It's very, very important, right? If everything else isn't going to work, that needs to work, because that makes your level worth playing even if the scripts don't work. As for scripting, when you're designing levels like that, you basically we're going to decide what the mission should be. Now, you could say destroy the whole Falmor army in the location XXXX, right? In which case, you've got to be able to count the death of every single soldier. In that case, you need to add a script to every single soldier that tells your main plot another one has died when it dies. And pray to God the game doesn't lag out at that moment, because if it lags out, it might miscount, and then the mission will never end. Or, right, and this is a trick Bethesda do as well, kill the warlord. In other words, you fight your way through all these Falmor, kill the warlord. That's the mission. So you only have to kill one person, but he's in such a position you have to fight your way through tons of Falmor to get to him. That's the best way, right? Because that way, less chance of an error, more chance of the quest being successful, regardless of what's going on your computer. So kill the warlord. So you've got your level. You have a script on the warlord saying the warlord's dead. Quest XXX is now over. Right, go to function whatever, blah blah blah, and the function says you completed your quest, well done, report back and debrief. Right, that's easy. You've got an entire level which are taking up most of your time. It's scripted, it's got special loot, and it's got to kill the warlord on the end. Simple as that. Right, you go to the warlord, bang, he's dead, mission over, I haven't explored the full thing, only tiny bit of scripting needed, and the quest scripts you used for that could then be cut and pasted into the next dungeon delve and done exactly the same way. You just take whatever you did, copy it, rename it, change the variables, you know, so it points to a different warlord, have different text, so you changed all, you know, you put new objective text down, right, and you do it again. And because you're not saving time on the editing, don't think that's where you save time. You've still got to edit the scripts. You save time on the testing, because the testing needs to be done. and you know that script works. You don't have to test every aspect of it, you know it works. Right? So all you have to do is play through it once. And you've done it, where normally when you're testing the script, you have to test various aspects of it in various different ways. But once you've cut and pasted the script you know works, it makes the job substantially easier. You can make 6 or 7 quests in a row like that, right? You know, one after the other, and the players will be happy because of all the unique stuff in the levels and stuff. They'll be happy because they'll be wondering what's going to come up next. Especially if you throw in some magical enchantments as well, some good ones. You know, with a small chance of it popping up. Make sure it's random though. Don't do anything static. Make sure it's random. Take the time to build your level lists. That's the key there. Anyhow, that's how you do the dungeon delving really quickly, just like that. I like to throw in a few simple quests, like go and see so-and-so and talk to them about this, and then you get a long conversation, you go back, mission over. That's a dialogue one. Right? That's just listening, finding a person, listening to them, and then going back and reporting back. I also like to do quests where you do simple things that don't achieve anything, because if everything you do is action-based, then when you get to the action, you're not going to appreciate it. So sometimes you do a patrol, like you do in Helgen, and whatever happens, happens, right? When I did Fighters Guild, I added special bad guys on the patrol routes, and if you killed them, you got more points for the patrol. And the points were used in the end to determine when the next, guild hall would unlock. So if you skipped past it all the time or just did a lousy job, the guild hall would lock much later, than planned. In fact, with the version of the Fighters Guild, which I fixed recently, if you skip past all the quests, I don't think the last, if you just do a straight A to B without doing anything, when you get to the last guild hall, I don't think you'll have enough points to open it. Although I might have fixed that. But if I didn't, tough innit? You should do it properly. But anyway, yeah, designing levels is key because it adds new locations. That's part. You can make quests really quickly with these things. Just to kill a warlord, it works. Achieve the objective. Excuse me. It worked. It achieves the objective. Now, these are missions you have when you're pretty much searching for something or getting rid of an enemy or something like that. Other quests like assassinations. Now, if you want someone to take, most people do assassination missions usually using a bow. They'll try and assassinate using a bow of some kind. So you want them to die quickly. So 2 things. Either give them some ammo that kills quickly, or make the target very weak. Right? Don't level it up. Because if they're going to stick 16 arrows into him, it doesn't feel very good. It doesn't feel like an assassination. So make sure they can assassinate him easily. You can surround him with super hard bodyguards if you want, in case he wants to get into a fight. But make sure the target himself can be assassinated quickly. That makes the assassination mission flow. Again, kill the warlord. Same scripts will work for that as well. Right? You just say, kill this bad guy, or assassinate this bad guy. You just change the wording. The same scripts work. So again, you've saved yourself a bit of time there. And the mission plays very differently. Because in this particular case, when you enter a location, you're not an enemy. Right? So all the bad guys spawning will be friends to you until you kill one of their own. They're like guards, basically. Right? So the location is different. It's like walking into Solitude or Whiterun instead of a bandit there, right? So this makes the mission feel very different, when actually it's exactly the same scripts as you used for your dungeon delving against Palmore. You see, that's a little trick. The wording on it and that lot can make it feel substantially different, in my opinion. And a lot of people haven't noticed when I've done that. You can easily add another function, right, which adds a second assassination to the same scripts, and wait for both of them to be complete before finishing the quest. That's easily done. Now, when you actually come to the meat and 2 veg of things, like making it look good, making people get engaged in it, having the pomp and ceremony, right, like I do in a lot of them, the more effort you put into those, the better your mod feels. This is the flash, this is the meat and 2 veg. For instance, right, when the Dragonborn goes to intercept Imperial Legion coming to Solitude, right? He stands before him near Whiterun, whole army and a general in front of him, persuades them to just turn around and go home. Right? This is what I'm talking about. The whole army was scripted, right? Including the general. Voice acting scripted everything. When he goes to be crowned the emperor, it's entirely scripted. Everything in there is scripted. The voice acting is done. Everybody turns up on command, and from that moment on, whenever you want to summon the court, they will return to them positions again, because that script is used over and over again. And whenever you blow the horn, to summon them, and they all turn up, and when you dismiss them, they all go away. That same script is used over and over again, and this kind of control over NPCs is important. That kind of making them turn out and do the things you want gives a sense of control and a sense of achievement. I mean, when you actually playing the default game, you're going to take on the Bruma Gate, and everybody's clapping Hail Martin, Septim, the Emperor, blah blah blah. That's Bethesda doing the same thing. Right, now, admittedly, the voice is a bit squeaky on that one, but it does add to the quality of your mod. If you don't have any of that in, it ruins it a little bit. But if you do have it in, if you do script things, remember there's no violence in these things. It's all heavily scripted stuff, and somebody giving a speech usually. And if you want to make it fancy, you change the camera positions, so you could home in on one spot, and when all the creatures come into that spot, all the men come into that spot, and the camera just sees them walking in. Then the speech starts. There's lots of different ways of handling it. You can even track characters as they walk by. Although to be honest, not all the characters are always going to be in the same positions in every shot, so it'd be different every time. But what you're doing is you're making your own cut scene. You can even take charge of the player character during these moments. But you need some of those in your mod in places to make it special, to make it feel right. And usually at important moments of the plotline. Don't go mad. Don't turn your mod into a movie, right? Like many games do, like Cyberpunk and stuff like that. There are people out there, me, right, who won't sit in there play. We get bored watching movies. I'm not going to pay £50 for a movie, for example, right? And that's what they do. A lot of these games are movies, and we're paying 50 quid for a fucking movie. So no, I buy games and play a game, and I don't like excessive cutscenes, but I do like to see some. Back in the day, they used to leave the cutscenes to the end, and then you'd play the game just to see what the cutscene was. And Team 17 were especially good at it. They made some really nice ones. They even used Tobias Richter's animations and cutscenes for the end of some of theirs, and he's really good at Amiga animator. But that's way back in the day before many of you were born. But anyway, yeah, if you do what I say, and you'll be able to cut down the amount of time spent making missions and still churn out loads of missions. And then you'll be able to spice it up, make it feel a deep, meaningful mod by doing these animated scenes, not animated, but carefully scripted scenes where people move to certain positions so you can speak to them and stuff like that. And it adds to the effect. I mean, one scene I was particularly proud of, I was using Matty's Knights of the Nine armour, right? And if there's going to be a Return to Helgen update, it'll be to include the Knights of the Nine armour that you get with the Skyrim Anniversary Edition, because I believe there's some Knights of the Nine armour in that, right? Says the Matty's Knights of the Nine armour was in the original Skyrim, and I added this. I've made ebony, I think it is, ebony armour, right? And I put it in the same locations in my mod as he had his armour in his mod. So it looks like if his mod was installed, his armour would replace mine. It would replace the ebony armour. It automatically just override it. Right? It's a little trick, right? A lot of people think it can't be done, but I just made sure it worked the same way as mods always work. And I actually had his armour automatically update my armour simply by putting it in the same locations he was using. Anyway, you had his mod installed, you walk into Windhelm, says you go into the temple, Talos' temple, and you as you're walking forward, you see a priest. You talk to the priest, right? And he's been a bit evasive and talking about how they have allies and you shouldn't judge him by his appearance. And then two of his friends walk out from hidden places around the side and come to stand next to him. And then you realise who he is, right? He's the current Divine Crusader, right? And you've got a knight either side of him, a Knight of the Nine, wearing full Knight of the Nine armour, and he introduces his friends to you and offers to help you. And that scene there is a perfect example of what I'm talking about cutscenes designed to create an emotional response in the player. Because there's nothing finer than seeing those two knights walk out when you're up against it and knowing that they're going to take your side. Especially a blast from the past in Elder Scrolls gameplay. I was always proud of that. Now, I don't think, unless you've got the original Matty mod like I have, I don't think that's still going to work. And I think it only really worked in the original Skyrim. So maybe one of the things I'll have to do is update the Skyrim anniversary edition of Return to Helgen and add that back in, because that was a very special moment in my mods. Anyway, remember what I said, right? And if you're going to do it, right, I recommend doing it 10 missions at a time, release it, 10 missions at a time, release it, 10 missions at a time. That way you build up your audience and make sure each 10 missions is a complete 10 missions and it reaches a natural ending before you make version 2. And in between version 1, 2 and 3, do all your minor updates and fixes, right? So you can have a fixed thing ready for version 2. Right, see you in the next one, folks.